Good afternoon, everybody. It's your pal Martin the Metalhead here. Hope you're going well. I've had a bit of a wonderful day with a whole bunch of friends of mine who I haven't seen in a little while due to the whole pandemic. But the main thing I was doing today was trying to print off my bank statements and a letter for my DBS check. Now, this video basically only applies to people in the United Kingdom, and this is about my experience of applying for a DBS, like disclosure and bearing service. Like, basically, in short words, a background check. Now, I've been living in the United Kingdom since 2015, but I've not been living like properly as a full-time resident since December 2016. So, I must warn you all that there are a lot of companies out there that they do DBS checks, but they're not like official. Many years ago I applied for a DBS check and then I just discovered it was only valid in Northern Ireland, so I went down the wrong channel because I really wanted to have a DBS check so I could work in background acting. And if you want to work with the BBC in background acting, you have to have a DBS check. Now what you gotta do is you have to find the UK government website which does this service, and normally how they verify your identification is through a different portal. Like you either use the post office or Barclays or any other ones. But in my scenario, because I did not have a proper smartphone, I mean I have an iPhone 5C but it doesn't cut it, I basically had to go online and fill in a lot of forms, like forms about like where I previously lived. It asked for like the addresses for the last 5 years. Now this was quite a bit hard for me, because if you remember my history, right, I lived in Birmingham for a couple of months at the start of 2017, then I had an accident and I left Birmingham, and then I moved to London, but for my first whole year in London, I was just in and out of like youth hostels. I would have to say I was in some ways homeless, but I was in much better conditions than somebody living on the streets, because like one, I was not living on the streets, and two, I had a full-time job. When I came back from my short stint in Sweden, I was living in a house for 2 months, but basically I wasn't really like renting. I wasn't like a long-term tenant. I only stayed there for 2 months, and then I went back into hostels, and then I found like my landlady who I stayed with in Walthamstow for 14 months, and then after getting kicked out of that during the start of the pandemic, I had to stay in a hostel for 8 months. So I could have written down a whole bunch of like different addresses where I stayed for 2 weeks, but it was too complicated to do all that, and like too much, because basically in June 2017 to June 2018, every 2 weeks I was like jumping back and forth from different like places in London. But I had like no fixed address, and a lot of the times I was like abroad for like a couple of days. So this place where I've been living like now, I've been here for a month, this is now like my proper fixed address. So after filling in all of your forms and telling about all your address history, you go online and you pay them £23 sterling. Now if any of these other companies are doing DBS checks that are charging you more than £23, they are basically scammers and they won't give you the right thing, and you'll be wasting your money. So always make sure you go through the British like government website. Now after you fill in all the forms, you have to choose what are your identification documents. Now there's a long list of documents, but in my case it was my British passport, my British driver's license, and my bank statement. Now you got to make sure all like your driver's license and your bank statement are in the current address you're living at, because your DBS certificate is going to be sent to your current address. It's not going to be sent to somebody else's address. You just have to decide where you're like living. So you take all that to the post office, and you take this letter that the DBS British government like give you. They basically say, look, this is a letter. Take your identification documents with these numbers to your post office. So I had to print out the letter, which is basically, it was like really encrypted. I had to put in a password so I could access the document. So after my friend printed them off for me, I went to the post office today, showed them my driver's license, British passport, and last month's bank statement for my new address. And basically they sent it through, so it's going to take a couple of days. I'm very certain I don't have a criminal record in this country. I might have had a bit of an iffy, like, landlords from many years ago who stole money from me, or I've never had like a parking ticket in my life because I don't drive. I've never been stopped and searched by police. I've never done anything like wrong. So I'm 100% certain I have a clean record. And so this goes to show that once you get a DBS certificate and you're clean and you're not a criminal, you can work in a lot of places. You know, you can work in schools, you can work at private educations, you can work with like in care homes, you can work on the BBC, you can basically, it gives you permission to like work with children and like those who are vulnerable, because they don't want criminals working in these types of like companies. And plus, you know, I needed a DBS for my current job, even though I've been there for a couple of years. And yeah, so that's the process of getting a DBE, like DBS. So confusing if it's DBE or DBS. Yeah, I mean, why can't I just call it the whole thing in full? Like, so anyway, Martin Metalhead, over and out.